Afternoon, everybody. It's Melodite63 here. So, got a new video for you today. It's a little strange. I'm just going to be reading some random stories I found on the r/Let'sNotMeet thread on Reddit. Also, guys, we're very close to 200 subscribers, so please make sure to keep those like, comments, and subscribes coming along. It's a great pleasure to have you all here. I hope you guys are enjoying the content. And I'm working on another project right now. This is just to kind of push out a video in the meantime because it might take a few more days. So anyway, guys, here we go. Hope you guys enjoy. I was stalked because of a single act of meaningless kindness. Just to preface this story, this happened about 12 years ago when I was around 13. The memories and emotions of this incident have faded away into the back of my mind, but recently I've started having flashbacks of this incident, and it led to multiple panic attacks while in public or even while I'm driving. After some deliberation, I thought perhaps writing about it and sharing it with a community that might understand the fear of experiencing this sort of thing, and I felt that it might help me validate some of my emotions. So here it goes. Like I said, I was 13, and I was living abroad when this happened. To give short background info that might help you understand the story better, I was living in an apartment complex. Every morning, the school buses would arrive at the main entrance of the entire complex and pick up the kids for school. The church I was attending at the time also operated buses to help people get back home, so every Sunday after the services were done, I would take the church bus back home, and I never doubted my sense of security and safeness, since this kind of system made me feel safe and protected. That was until I met him on the Sunday morning. I was a church kid and quite involved. I was serving the youth group as a part of the welcome team for newcomers when I met him. He entered the chapel with his mother following him behind, and she explained that he had recently moved to the country and were just starting to settle down. My first impression of him was that he was lanky, shy, and very quiet. He seemed so harmless, innocent, naive. So when his mother left him after filling out the form, I gave him a smile and greeted him and led him to an empty seat, and I thought nothing more of him until I saw him again in the small groups. So I greeted him again, saying something like, "So nice to see you again." I still remember how he just shyly nodded and not really answering me. When the small group time ended, I took out Haichu, Korean soft candy, and gave one to everyone in the group, and even the teacher, and as I handed out these regular candy to him, and he softly whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. That was the first time I heard him speak that day. I hadn't realized that he was living in the same complex as me until I got off the church bus, and saw him coming down the steps of the bus as well. It was a funny coincidence, so I told him on how weird it was that we were living in the same small group and also living in the same complex. He nodded again, and I walked off first because he was waiting for his mom and little sister who were coming behind him. My apartment building was number 20 in the first row of buildings. I had opened the door and was about to go in when he followed behind me. Me, still in the newcomer greeting mode, I responded to this by asking him if he was living in the same building. He nodded again. I noticed that his mother and sister were not here yet, so I got into the elevator first and asked him if he was going to wait for them, and gave him my goodbye, and he quietly nodded yes. Next morning, I saw him waiting in the lobby when I got out of the elevator. He was alone, and I asked him if he was waiting for his sister, and he nodded. So I just gave him a quick, "Well, have a nice day," and ran off. And for every day of that week, I saw him waiting for his sister in the lobby, standing in the corner in the right front of the elevators. I didn't think much of it. I always says hi or good morning to him, and he would just nod or wave timidly. There was nothing more to it than that, and that was until one Sunday when I got back home from after church. He was walking behind me, and this time together with his sister and mom, so I thought it would be a nice girl and, hold the door for them. So I waited holding the door open, and only to have all three of them walk right past my buildings. Strange, I thought. So I peeked my head out to see that they were entering building number 15, which was 5 buildings down the street. At first I didn't think much of it, thinking that maybe they moved out of building 20 and into building 15. But when I stepped out of the elevator next morning to see him again in the lobby, in the same corner, my heart sank deep. I don't know how to respond to it, but I remember choosing to not confront him because I was in denial that this was actually happening. I didn't have the courage to ask him for an answer. Things quickly progressed since that day. I started getting late-night calls to my cell phone, the typical not going to speak but just going to breathe heavily kind of call that you get that makes you feel insecure even though you're not safe in your room. He also stopped waiting for me in the lobby since that morning, but would stand far in the corner of the street every day and watch me wait for me to get on my bus. Me becoming hyper-vigilant didn't help with the situation either. I could always spot him watching me, even though he would often try to hide behind a thick tree or the guard's cabin. It made me feel sick to my stomach, but I don't think I felt so threatened and cornered to the point, at least in that moment, that I wanted to seek adult help. I was a very, very private teenager who was already keeping some traumatic experiences a secret from my parents. So naturally, this felt like another secret that I would keep so they wouldn't worry about me. At church, I kept up my bright facade, but would distance myself as far as possible to avoid any sort of contact with him. I actively put this distance between me and him, because whenever I decided to put my facade on and say hi to him, instead of returning my greetings, he would just stare into my face with these stark, swollen eyes, and then just drop his gaze down to my private areas. The fact that it was summer and was wearing shorts did not help at all. And whenever he stared at my thighs and between my legs, the shame and the embarrassment, the feeling that I was being dirty by his gaze, the anxiety and the paranoia, it was too much for me. I started skipping this small group session and left right after the youth group. I ended up so that I would avoid getting home with him at the same time, and on days that I did happen to attend small group, I just sat quietly, unwilling to speak a single word while he stared at me intensely. One day while the teacher was leading the discussion, he suddenly burst into an angry yell, shouting, "Why do you keep ignoring me when you clearly know that I like you?" Needless to say, I was embarrassed, ashamed, shocked, and terrified all at the same time. The teacher tried to de-escalate the situation, but he stormed out of yelling on how frustrated he was with me for not returning his affection. I wanted to leave as well, but the fear that I might run into him made me stay in my seat while everyone in the group quietly whispered among themselves about this sudden drama that happened before them. It was a huge shock to me that he was doing all these things because he liked me. But what shook me more at that moment was the fact that the teacher didn't seem to be fazed at all by his sudden outburst. She didn't seem to be surprised by the fact he had such feelings for me. Instead, she casted glances at me with some sort of knowing in her eyes. I had always wondered how he got a hold of my phone number, and this was it. The teacher dismissed everyone but asked me to stay. I was always the model student at church, but the moment I was left alone with her, I lost it. I cursed and swore and demanded her to tell me if she knew how much he was making my life miserable. She told me she knew he liked me, and apparently he started liking me because of that stupid-ass candy I gave him on the first day. She had given him my number because she thought it was cute seeing him like me so much, so I told her what he had been doing and how he waited for me every morning in the lobby even though he lived in a different building, how he would stare and watch me from the corner of the street, and how he would stare between my thighs and my chest, and how he would call me late at night with the heavy breathing and all. I was having trouble speaking and breathing because of how much I was crying, but I remember yelling, "He's like a fucking stalker." And that was when I fully recognized that I was being stalked. When it became quiet due to the shock of the realization, the teacher took her chance to speak and told me that he was mentally troubled and didn't know any better. So I needed just to, quote for quote, bear with it. And that was the end of the conversation. Honestly, there's a gap in my memory after that day, so it's hard for me to recall what events had led up to it, but the last time I saw him was when I had the most fearful encounter with him. I was already on the church bus waiting, and there were 2 girls sitting a couple rows ahead of me, and the bus was silent other than that, and I was sitting by the aisle when I saw him get on the bus. The strange thing is that when he got on, the 2 girls suddenly turned extremely hostile towards him and told him to go get the fuck off the bus and calling him a fucking pervert. He responded angrily, "Well, you whores aren't the ones I want to see anyways, so shut up." This was the first time I heard him speak such profanity, so I honestly was shocked, and then he fixed his eyes straight at me, walked over to where I was, and sat a row diagonally behind my seat. My heart was pounding at this point, and I wanted to sit by the windows to hide from his gaze, but I was scared to what he might think it or mistake it as an invitation to sit next to me. So I stayed frozen in my seat until more people came in and only moved to the window seat when an adult asked if they could sit next to me. I think there was an instinctive feeling that told me I couldn't get off together with him, so I purposely got off at the stop before my apartment. It was only a 600-meter walk from the bus stop to my home, so I mixed in with the people and got off the bus with them. The bus had stopped by the side entrance of another apartment complex. I just needed to walk down the street to get to mine, but the street was empty and deserted because it was one of those areas that was waiting to be developed by the city. So I started walking towards my home when I realized that he had also gotten off with me. He was walking a few feet behind me, and my gut wrenched as he got closer and closer. Something told me being alone with him on the street was dangerous. So I broke into a run until I saw an alleyway that parted off from the road. In my panic, when I saw that there was smaller shops that were busy with people, there were people hanging in the alleyway, chilling by the benches outside and stuff, and I was certain that he could have followed me into the alley after I'd ran, but still looked behind to check in just in case, but there he was, still following me. He had ran after me. My relief quickly turned into terror, and I hastened my face, purposely weaving in between people in the hopes of losing him, but whenever I looked back I could still see him. Eventually the people hanging by the shops thinned out, and I was walking in an empty alleyway. On the opposite end of the alley I could see that there was a bigger road with more cars and people. I was already quite out of breath as I wasn't fit for a person, but with my last strength I ran for the busy road, hoping to lose him if he was still behind me. I stopped once I reached the busy road and turned around to look into an empty alley. I stood for an extra minute staring into the alley to confirm that he wasn't following me. Fortunately, my house was close by, so I stayed at her place until I felt it was safe enough to walk back home. That was the last time I saw him. I stopped going to small groups. I started serving children's department as an accomplice so I could avoid going to the youth group. I didn't see him again after that, but one time I happened to meet my small group teacher and she told me that he had left the country. Apparently he was reported multiple times at the school for lewd behavior, such as sneaking into the girls' restroom. That was why the girls on the bus were grossed out by him, and in the end he had to be expelled from school, and I think that was when I decided to bury the terror and the fear away because he was no longer an immediate threat in my life. Funny story though, after that whole incident, I had to watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off at school, but the moment Ferris's friend Cameron Fry showed on the screen, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up because the actor's face looked exactly like him, and just watching his face brought back the trauma. Now I can't watch the movie because it reminds, every time I see Cameron's face, it still gives me anxiety. Anyways, if anyone's made it to the end of this long post, thank you for staying through this with me, and I often wonder what it might have become of him and wonder if his parents knew what his son was. If he was truly suffering from mental illness, my only hope is that he's received the proper treatment so that no one else had to go through what I had to. So to the guy that I met at this place, and this church group. Let's please not meet again. Hey everybody, just a quick side note. I just wanted to say again, we're close to 200 subscribers. It would mean the absolute world to me if you could possibly get to me to this goal. I think we're not too far away. I think we're less than 10 subscribers away. So yeah, anyway guys, I hope you guys are enjoying the content. Keep liking, keep commenting, keep subscribing, share the video with your friends, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a good rest of our week. I know it's a Monday. Everybody hates Mondays. And, hopefully, maybe tonight when you get home, ask your parents for some pizza, or maybe if you're my age, go buy a pizza. Man, I want a pizza now. Anyway, guys, most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Melody family if you're new here. And, ladies and gentlemen, stay mellow.